Since he was a kid, Lucas carried around a sense of justice way bigger than he was. He grew up in a tiny town where the mornings smelled like fresh bread and the cracked asphalt whispered stories of folks who passed by with more hope than cash. On his walk to school, he always ran into a skinny girl with big eyes and an empty stomach. Sophia. He didn't have much, but whatever crumbs he had, he split with her. And here's a lesson no one tells you. If you learn to give when you got almost nothing, you become unshakable when you got plenty. To anyone watching, his gesture looked small, saving pennies to buy bread and sharing it. But right there on that corner by the square, something sprouted that a lot of grown-ups never grasp. The muscle of character being shaped in silence, far from cameras and applause. Want a gut check? Pay attention to who you are when nobody's watching. The way you talk to the waiter, the cashier, the doorman, that says more about your future than any fancy diploma on the wall. Sophia never said much, but her eyes gave everything away. And when she smiled after Lucas handed over bread, something lit up inside him. That little trade, a slice of bread for a look of pure thanks, was a daily reminder that empathy doesn't cost much, but it's worth gold. And right there, without even knowing it, Lucas planted a seed that would someday circle back. Thing is, life's a plot twist expert, and the harvest rarely shows up the way we expect. Over time, that small act of kindness turned into a bond. Lucas didn't just feed Sophia. He sat down with her and listened. Real listening, you know? No rush, no phone in hand, no mental to-do list. He told her his dreams. He wanted to be a lawyer, and she, with the scratchy voice of someone who learned young to swallow her tears, talked about the daily fight just to exist. Here's where most people mess up. Empathy isn't about understanding someone's pain. It's about stepping into it with them. Those shared afternoons became shelter. In the middle of a hard routine, those meetups felt like invisible blankets warming their souls. Lucas thought of himself as ordinary, but in Sophia's eyes, he was proof the world could still be good. And that's the kicker. Sometimes you think you're not doing anything special, and you're keeping someone from collapsing. It's like offering a shoulder to someone carrying the world. You don't lift the weight, but you make the load bearable. And it was in that raw, beautiful everyday life that Lucas got schooled. Not in law, yet, but in humanity. His dream of becoming a lawyer was born right out of the injustice stamped on Sophia's skin. He wanted to change the world, and started by changing his own. Want to flip yours too? Start close. Listen more, judge less. And if you can, sit next to someone in silence. Sometimes that's all a soul needs to keep going. Years roll by, and like so many stories that start intense, Sophia disappeared. Lucas felt that weird emptiness only someone who's had a true connection understands. Like a piece of him wandered off. Even with the grind of law school, he'd catch himself staring out the window, wondering where she might be. Sometimes life yanks people out of our story before we can say goodbye, but it never erases what they planted. Lucas moved forward, but he never forgot. The street girl became a silent symbol of the promise he'd made himself. Fight for justice. Not the fancy suit, slick speech justice, but the kind that starts on street corners where nobody's looking. So even without knowing if she was still alive, he decided his future would be a place to protect the forgotten. Need a real-world example? Check out the Innocence Project. Lawyers who dig into wrongful convictions. Lucas wanted to be that. He could have become anything, but he chose to be a bridge between suffering and hope, between abandonment and dignity. That bread shared in childhood was morphing into a life mission. And if there's a takeaway here, it's this. Everything you do with heart eventually swings back. Sometimes it takes forever. Sometimes it shows up in the wildest way. But it comes back. And that's where Lucas's story veers into territory even he couldn't predict. After graduating, Lucas dove headfirst into law. It wasn't just about winning cases. It was about giving a voice to the voiceless. He started at a local firm, but his name zipped through town as the guy who did things differently. While many lawyers stuck to the script, he hunted for real causes rooted in real pain. You know the type you call, and even in chaos, you feel somebody actually cares? Lucas was that dude. He never forgot where he came from, and his compassion turned into action. He volunteered in social projects, defended the wronged, and fed kids with dreams like Sophia once had. Here's the punchline. Success isn't only what you earn, but what you hand out. Want to be remembered? Plant impact. Donate time, share knowledge. Hit up an orphanage. Offer free legal advice at a community center. Sometimes that's worth more than 1,000 courtroom wins. But fate, which loves testing anyone who refuses to grow cold, was about to flip the script. Lucas, used to defending innocence, never imagined he'd soon be on the other side. The peace he'd built was about to get shaken hard, and how he handled it would reveal that a man's true character shows when a whole house seems to fall. It was a totally normal morning when everything crashed. Hard knocks on the door, hearts racing. That eerie sense something was way off. Lucas opened up and found two stone-faced cops. No small talk. They said he was being accused of a brutal crime. Here's one of life's harshest lessons. Doesn't matter how clean you are, the world can shove you onto a horror stage you never auditioned for. Armed robbery, people hurt, charges ripped from a badly written nightmare. Lucas, who'd spent his life defending the wrongly accused, was now getting treated like one. The worst part? How fast society turns its back. No digging, no listening. Everyone slapped him with guilty. Like they say, truth laces up its shoes while lies already lapped the block. And in that chaos, Lucas started to realize the problem wasn't just the accusation. It was a whole system. While he tried to figure out how any of this was possible, he watched his life come apart, bolt by bolt. Folks who once admired him now crossed the street. Friends went silent, and their stares carried that heavy, silent judgment. Nobody asked you okay? Everybody wanted, did you really do it? Yet the deepest pain wasn't the false charge. It was realizing that living with integrity still doesn't bulletproof you from a total meltdown. The trial day hit like a silent tsunami. Lucas woke early, dressed slow, trying to stitch together dignity that felt shredded inside. Walking into the courtroom, the place seemed to shrink. Every stare, every doubt, every snap judgment dropped on him at once. The silence was so thick, you could hear fear click-clacking in high heels between the benches. And Lucas's heart? Beating louder than ever. Then he looked up as the judge walked in, and time froze. Her, Sophia, the girl with the starving eyes, was now the woman charged with deciding his fate. The world paused for a second. Fate? Irony? Poetic justice? Whatever it was, their paths had crossed again, now on opposite sides of the bench. And she started crying. Not just from sadness, but from a recognition so deep words couldn't hold it. Sophia, steady, tried to keep it professional, but her eyes said it all. The forgotten childhood, the shared bread, days of despair eased by one kid's kindness. How do you judge the man who once saved your life? The room, still dead silent, turned into an emotional arena only those two could fully read. And there, center stage, a new kind of trial began, not just legal, but of soul, story, and conscience. With her gaze locked on Lucas, Sophia's mind got blitzed by memories like an old reel on rewind. Cold mornings, warm rolls, the smile he gave at no charge. Everything flared up with painful clarity. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was proof of what kindness can do. And the wildest part? Lucas had no clue that small gesture years ago was planting the seed of his own salvation. The courtroom stayed in that tense hush. Sophia had to choose. Let emotion steer or use it to chase real justice. She wasn't just a judge. She was living proof of what he represented. And like anyone who's ever been lifted out of darkness, she knew how heavy that decision was. 'Cause sometimes being fair means honoring the past that shaped someone. So, voice shaking, she called for silence. And right there, before everyone, the hearing stopped being just a criminal trial. What was at stake was much bigger. How the world chooses to see someone who's done good. Sophia knew her role went beyond the robe. She had to be firm and human at once. And maybe, just maybe, what was about to unfold in that courtroom was something no one expected. Sophia drew a deep breath, feeling the weight of what she was about to tackle. It wasn't only Lucas's future on the line. It was a chance to prove the system can be more than a cold machine. She remembered the belly-flopping mornings she waited for a role and found dignity in Lucas instead. That molded the woman now sitting as judge. And nobody could erase that, not even the robe. Everyone waited. Sophia lifted her chin, met the jury's eyes, and dropped a line that cracked like thunder. We're here to debate more than guilt. We're here to redefine justice. Jurors glanced at each other. This wasn't just another trial. It was a call-out, an invitation to look past flimsy evidence and lazy labels. And here's where lots of folks get lost. They think justice is just letter of the law. Real justice kicks in when the heart joins the process. Sophia ran the session with power and sensitivity. As the evidence rolled out, something started to show. The story didn't line up. Details clashed. And right then, a new spark of hope lit in Lucas's eyes. Evidence kept rolling, but the timeline, suspect description, even the location, none matched what Lucas actually did that day. Sophia, with the radar of someone who's been on both sides of pain, connected the dots. Empathy became an investigative tool. When you know someone's soul, you spot lies hiding even in silence. That's when she saw it. Lucas wasn't just an accused guy. He mirrored her own story. Someone who survived on the margins, who turned little into plenty. Someone who, even when the world got cruel, chose kindness. The hearing shifted. Eyes softened. Sophia knew this wasn't about technicalities anymore. It was about lives braided by something most systems ignore, character. But even with all these revelations, Sophia felt a gap, a missing link, a deeper explanation to tie loose ends. So she called a recess. She needed to rewind every step, every word, every gesture. And in that hush between gavel taps, a forgotten memory surfaced, a vital puzzle piece that could change everything. During the break, Sophia let herself drift through memories. Her mind dragged her to those cold nights when, with nobody around, she wrote letters to Lucas. Letters never delivered but packed with hope. Alone on the street, she built an invisible bridge to the boy who, day after day, gave her a reason to believe. Now that same kid, grown, stood before her, needing someone to believe in him. Clarity hit like a snap. Lucas couldn't be condemned until truth was dug up completely. The accusation felt more like well-staged theater than real crime. It smelled of him being picked, planted as a scapegoat to hide something huge. And anyone who's tasted raw injustice, like Sophia, knows when something reeks of setup. She came back determined, eyes locked on Lucas, heart pounding with purpose. We're going to find out what happened that day, she said. Lucas mentioned a group of shady guys who often hung around the shelter, and Sophia knew there was a trail to follow. When you mix heart and head in an investigation, buckle up. The truth tends to break loose like a hurricane, set on digging deep. Sophia gathered all pieces. The men Lucas mentioned weren't random. They fit a pattern, suspicious moves, links to big names in town. The kind of thing nobody dared sniff until someone decides enough is enough. And that's when the whole mess started to unravel, like a spool of filthy secrets. In the following days, Sophia plunged into an investigation that exposed the rotten core of a city that loved calling itself model. She unearthed testimonies, dug up docs, and, more powerful, found voices. People who'd seen, heard, lived it. And when truth crawls out, a call came. A woman named Clara, ex-member of the criminal group, ready to spill. The twist was about to get real. Clara, voice trembling, dropped a bomb that turned Sophia's blood to ice. Lucas had been framed. The setup was crafted to shield the real culprits, steering spotlights onto someone the public trusted. A perfect target. The accusation wasn't just a mistake. It was a plan. And right then, Sophia understood Lucas's battle was way bigger than one trial. It was a war against the system's rotten guts. Sophia knew Clara's testimony could flip everything but got the risk. On the phone, Clara's voice shook more from fear than emotion. If they find out I helped, I'm dead, she said. Truth is brutal. Sometimes speaking up costs big, but silence costs more. Clara wasn't just an informant. She was a victim trapped by invisible chains. Sophia, with that tone of someone who shouldered the world, did what few do. She welcomed her. You're not alone. We'll keep you safe. It wasn't court talk. It was a soul promise. Clara paused, swallowed hard, then answered with a resolve she didn't know she had. I'll help. For him. And for every kid he's helped. In that moment, hope got a voice. Fear started to back off. Next day, the courtroom felt different, buzzing like everyone sensed something huge coming. Clara walked in, head high, step steady, heart in shards. Sophia greeted her with a look of solidarity. Not accomplices in crime, but in truth. And when Clara spoke, her words blew up like dynamite in an old foundation. Nobody left untouched. Her voice started low, shaky, years of fear lodged in her throat. But as words spilled, she steadied. She laid it out. The group wasn't some random gang. It was a power network steering the city from shadows. The hit on Lucas wasn't revenge or coincidence. It was cover-up. He was the perfect scapegoat, precisely because he was too good. Her words landed like hammer blows. The biggest shock wasn't the narrative. It was the name. The mastermind, Eduardo Dantas. Respected businessman, civic hero, untouchable. Now outed in open court as the puppet master. The room, already tense, fell into a scary hush. No one knew where to stash the shock and shame. Sophia, calm as someone staring down a hurricane, asked a question hanging in the air. "Can you prove this, Clara?" That's when the game flipped for good. Clara said she had documents, recordings, the works. She was done running. And in that instant, the courtroom morphed from trial venue to battleground, a rigged lie versus a truth finally finding its legs. Naming Eduardo turned the place upside down. The city's golden boy image cracked loud. Sophia knew she was up against a dangerous foe, powerful, shadowy evil. And here's where truth needs more than evidence. It needs guts. Clara decided fear wouldn't win this round. She met with Sophia, handed over years in files, tape calls, even spreadsheets of shady deals. Proof that leaves no wiggle room. Sophia felt the mission's weight. This wasn't just about saving Lucas. It was about cleansing an entire town poisoned by lies and power. Truth, she knew, can torch beautifully decorated structures. Next day, Clara returned like someone carrying TNT, but with a spark in her eyes. Certainty she was doing right. The court was packed, every face a question mark. When she spoke, it wasn't just Lucas who felt the ground tilt. It was as if everyone got slapped with, how many truths have we ignored to keep the peace of a lie? That friend changes people. With Clara on the stand and evidence rolling out, the air thickened, nearly unbreathable. Tape calls, signed docs, names dropped casually, all pointing straight at Eduardo Dantas' kingpin. This wasn't just a trial anymore. It was a demolition of a corruption castle painstakingly built. Eduardo, once smug, jumped up trying to salvage his image. Smirking, he called Clara unstable, labeled Lucas a fraud, even tried to undercut Sophia's authority. But his words were pebbles tossed into a tide that had already turned. Jurors' eyes had changed. Sophia's too. Truth finally had room to breathe. Sophia, steady as ever, didn't flinch. She knew this moment was the tipping point. Staring at Eduardo, she said, "You can look away from truth, but you can't erase it." Then she asked Clara for one last piece, the recording of Eduardo and his crew plotting the frame-up. When the tape played, doubt became certainty. The room drowned in revelation silence. The tape was crisp, cold. Eduardo's voice, confident he'd never be caught. "We need someone people trust. A clean name. Someone like Lucas." His words boomed through the court. Not just a random phrase, absolute confirmation of the scheme. For a beat, every gaze swung to Lucas, now not with suspicion but with shame for ever doubting him. Jurors looked rocked. The man long seen as integrity's poster boy was clearly a victim of a rig system. The prosecutor stood, speechless, trying to prop up a collapsing case. Eduardo, now pale, sweating like the floor was opening under him, sputtered, "Fake, fabrication." But panic clung to every move. Sophia seized a chance to nail the coffin shut. Eyes firm, she declared. Truth always finds a way up, and today it's here for all to see. Lucas, choked up, finally spoke. "I just wanted to help. Never thought kindness could make me a target." His words hit every heart, and the room's tension turned into something rare in court. Hope. The verdict still loomed, though. The courtroom felt ready to erupt. Jurors murmured. Spectators sucked in breaths like holding back a collective yell. Sophia sensed this was historic. not just for Lucas, but for everyone ever crushed by silent injustice. She rose, faced a jury, and spoke like she believed every syllable. Believe the truth. Believe Lucas. He's exactly who this world needs. Those words came not from a textbook judge, but from the girl who once sat hungry on a curb and found salvation in Lucas's outstretched hand. Now she wanted to give it back. Lucas wasn't just a victim. He was proof that kindness, no matter how buried, blooms. The tension was so thick, even the presiding judge had to take a deep breath. He signaled for quiet, then turned to the jury. "It's time." They huddled, whispering, faces lined with emotion. Minutes crawled like hours until the foreperson spoke. Not guilty. The word shot through the room like freedom. People cried, hugged, clapped. Justice, the real kind, had won. The echo of not guilty still bounced around when Lucas's knees went weak. It wasn't just relief. It was the end of an invisible prison tougher than steel bars. Sophia stepped down and hugged him tight, tears in her eyes. "You did it, Lucas. Kindness won." He, sobbing, whispered, "No, Sophia, we did together." Time itself seemed to bow to love and truth. Clara joined them, emotional, gripping their hands like holding her own redemption. That unlikely trio now symbolized something rare and priceless. When good people link arms, even the nastiest structures can crumble. That courtroom, once Injustice's stage, became the set for a new beginning. With the trial over, Lucas made a choice. His story wouldn't end there. He'd launch an organization to help others wrongfully accused, a bridge between pain and justice. And Sophia, fired up, leaned into human rights work. Their rough past became raw material for something bigger. And this was just the opening chapter of a legacy they were ready to build. What was born from pain turned into a life mission. Lucas founded a nonprofit offering legal and emotional support to folks chewed up by the system. It wasn't just paperwork and defense. It was listening, showing up, staying present. People like Miss Clara, Pedro, and countless silenced voices finally had backup. Kindness turned into structure, into real-deal action. Sophia, meanwhile, became more than a judge. She became a symbol. She started giving talks, hitting schools, uplifting kids who, like her once, felt sidelined, hopeless. Together, she and Lucas set up educational programs, pushing reading, empathy discussions, social justice debates. Example? They brought books like The Little Prince and To Kill a Mockingbird into underserved neighborhoods, because they believed changing the world starts by changing how you see it. The sweetest part? Their bond sprouted into something even stronger. Love. The friendship sparked on that cracked sidewalk blossomed into a rock-solid partnership. And like everything watered with truth, it bloomed. The wedding was simple but symbolic, surrounded by people touched by their actions. Clara, teary-eyed, stood as maid of honor. The girl from the square and the bread-sharing boy were writing a new chapter, and there were plenty more pages ahead. Soon Lucas and Sophia's story spread like a cool breeze on a hot day. It wasn't just a feel-good tale. It was a lighthouse for anyone who thought justice was only for the powerful. They visited schools, NGOs, communities. They didn't roll in like superheroes, but with the humility of folks who'd been on the other side. They shared pain, victories, lessons, showing compassion and truth aren't just pretty words. They're daily moves that change destinies. Everywhere they went, they dropped seeds. Invisible kids started to raise their heads. Burnout teachers teared up, seeing hope still exists. Children looked at them and realized one kind act can spark a revolution. Want to flip your reality? Copy them. Start small. One gesture, a listening ear, a kind glance. The change you crave might start with what you do on your walk home. And their friendship, now seasoned, overflowed into a quiet, steady love. No soap opera drama, just real life. A love that had known hunger, fear, abandonment, and still chose to stay. They knew more battles were coming, more rough days. But now they had each other. More important, they shared a purpose. Their story kept inviting the rest of us to remember that even in pitch dark, you can always strike a match. By now you've seen it. Lucas and Sophia's journey isn't just about justice. It's about kindness's power to flip the world. It's a reminder that when everything looks lost, whatever you do today can echo for decades. And if this story proves anything, it's that nobody's too small to make a dent. A simple move, a splash of compassion, might be the spark someone needs to not give up. So how about turning that swell of emotion into action? Start with what you've got. Help somebody on your block. Lend an ear. Defend someone without a voice. And if this story stirred you, share it. Don't let it die on your screen. Inspire, nudge, move people. Seeds of good only grow when you spread them. And that can start with one simple click. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications and stick with us. We don't just tell stories to tug your heart. We tell them to spark change. And this might be your shot to be part of something way bigger than you ever imagined.